for the $15 a month membership, that's less than a cup of coffee. And for that, you're going to be gaining access to some of the most compelling and fascinating interviews that you've probably people from all over the world who are experiencers, doctors, researchers, and just folks that have an angle on things that, well, I'd never heard before. You probably haven't either. So I'm inviting you to become a member of the Jerry Wills Show, in case you're not already. It's real easy. Just go to jerrywillsshow.com and go to sign up and become a member. Your $15 membership level is probably your best bet because all of the really fascinating interviews are right there. All right. Well, I'm just waiting for someone to show up here on my screen so I can start the interview. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, Jer. Time to start the show. Jerry? Jerry, where are you?
Don't worry, everything's okay.
It's time for the Jerry Wills Show. We are connected. Halloween edition. And we have a special guest for this show, someone who's a frequent visitor to the Jerry Wills Show. I'm sure you know who this is once I tell you that he is one of the world's most astonishing astrologers. He's made predictions that just go beyond coincidence, that goes into the realm of the fantastic. He's also actually quite a genius about a great number of things. If you are ever interested in finding out more about our guest, William Stickevers, you can go to williamstickevers.com. I think it'd be well worth your time to do that. So without any delay, I'm going to bring William on. We're going to jump right into it. We've got all kinds of fascinating things to talk about. And I hope you don't miss a moment of this show. So let's just see what happens, and we'll bring William Stickevers right on. Hello, William. Welcome to the show again. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, Jerry. Be on again.
Oh, man. What is the deal with that? Hold on. Got to get rid of that. Yeah, it's good to have you on, buddy. Every time we have you on, it is, for me at least, a real treat, an absolute pleasure. And I don't know. I learn so much from you every time you come on here, and the conversations have just always been extraordinary. Folks, which you probably, of course you don't know, we were recently in Las Vegas, and we spent some time with William and his very lovely wife, Catherine. Had dinner with them, and though it wasn't planned, I'm sure, but we spent about 4 hours just sitting there talking about one thing, then another, and another, and another, and discovered the magic of absinthe. Well, William did, and it was an event. I'll tell you what, it was one of those things that I'm going to remember for as long as I'm alive, I'm sure. Kathy was there, of course, and she and Catherine had some great conversations as well. It was just terrific. And so having you on again, William, knowing the kind of conversations that you and I can have, this is a real treat for me, and I know it's going to be a real treat for everyone who's watching or listening if you're tuning into the radio channel. So, Halloween edition. Where shall we begin? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I mean, we could talk a little bit about Halloween. I mean, it's really an interesting holiday because it's almost like the Christmas, if you will, of the paranormal and the occult and the metaphysical. And this is the time of year when people get readings, and they'll do a seance. They'll pull out the old Ouija board, collecting dust in a closet. They'll do all sorts of things they wouldn't just normally do, or they get more, a little more. I mean, it's now we're officially in holiday season because a few weeks from now we'll be in Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
So we transition right from Halloween is the kickoff to Thanksgiving that leads to Christmas. So it's really the holiday season officially started today.
Yeah. And, this time of year, folks are looking at a lot of different dynamics in their lives. Some people are far away from home, others
Yeah.
are nearby. It's a time of year as well that I've noticed that um, it's like some people who are terminally ill, um, they have the will to live at least past Thanksgiving, or uh, in many instances past Christmas. I don't
Hmm.
know. I'm sure there are
Right.
those who live, a little bit right after New Year's. They'll pass as well. But I find it, and I always have found it, quite fascinating that there is this inner will to continue to see friends, to see family, and to have that last experience before they go. But it's also a time of year when people who've already passed, they sometimes seem to manifest in some way. They'll show up, let their presence be known, so that those who were grieving their loss, they try to let them know that they're still around, that they're still
Right.
here.
Right.
Yeah, I've run into that. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see it in the astrology. We actually know based on the astrology that January is the month where there are the most deaths and people die around 11 a.m. So we
Wow.
know around, yeah, so we know like, right, so we you could pin it down to a day, right? We could do that as well. Um, but yeah, most people died around 11 a.m. in the month of January by far, and this is a worldwide thing, right? So I look
Hmm.
at a lot of my family members, my grandparents. I look at people that I know have passed in my life. I'm 60 years old now, so quite a number of people. I had a lot of older friends growing up, born in the 1930s and early 1940s. So many of them have passed. I think all of them have passed at this point, and most of them died in the month of January. So it totally fits with what you're saying that
Isn't
people
it something?
seem to want to squeak out the last 3 months, October, November, December, spend time with their family, right? Enjoy the holidays. And most of these people were not dying, Jerry. Most people who pass in January are not in hospice for the 3 months prior. So the people in hospice, that statistic doesn't seem to apply. So if you're in hospice, you can die any month. But if you're not in hospice and you're pretty much no one saw it coming, you could say sometime around 11 a.m. January 1st and January 30th or 29th, 30th, you're going to pass, right? If it's your time.
And you mentioned you can even see it in astrology. Is it seriously? You can see this sort of thing in their chart?
Yes, absolutely. We can't. Yeah. So, for example, I actually recently looked at my own chart and I said, okay, assuming I don't take any vitamins, I don't train, I don't work out, I don't watch my weight, I sit in front of Netflix, for the remainder of my
Sure.
time and consume carbohydrates and right and binge watch. How much time do I have? And basically, I'm clocking in at 82.7 or 80. I would probably make it, my shelf life is good up until 83 years of age. So
All
that
right.
would mean, right, like the January following my 83rd birthday, or, technically my 82nd birthday, the January following that, because I'm born in March, would be the month, right, assuming I didn't have any medical malady or life threatening disease at that point, would be the one I would need to be watchful for.
But if you're doing things to take care of yourself. How is
Right.
that going to play out in the chart?
Right. So you can extend your shelf life. So the question becomes, based on the development and advancements in anti-aging, which is being accelerated and intensified by AI coming onto the scene,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we factor that in, and assuming I apply that and I'm disciplined about it, the question is how much can I push that shelf life from, let's say, 83 to 93, right? Or 103. Okay. So
Okay.
that's really the big question. But right now I'm clocking in at 83. That doesn't mean I'll die at 83, and that's not in my head, but it's like, okay, right? Based on what's happening right now with
Mhm.
my body, my physiology, based on my chart, okay, the fact that I have not had a heart attack or cancer prior to the age of 55, and looking at all of the statistical projections, when you combine them together, I'm clocking in at 83. So we do have an idea, right? But we can't say it's exactly going to be this day or exactly this year, but we know the range. We know, actuaries, you know what an actuary is, right?
No, it's an actuary.
Yeah, so it's like a mathematician who specializes in probability mathematics,
Mm-hmm. All right.
who works for the government or NASA, or more importantly, insurance companies mainly. And an
Mm-hmm.
actuary will actually determine within 3 years to 3 months of accuracy. They've got it down to a year now, right? But between about a year, within 12 months of when you will die, just based on uh, the medical records and your, through a review of the medical records and an insurance medical inspection. So when you apply for life insurance, say at the age of 43, and they give you a full medical inspection, they look at your blood work, and they can pretty much pin it down to within a year. And so they'll know the year prior they're going to cut off your insurance, right?
Really?
You're not going to be able to renew the premium. Yes, that's what actuaries do. That's why, right? So you'll pay into something you'll probably, right, that your beneficiaries will not be able to collect on.
I'll be
Or
darned.
they'll raise your premium to a level which is absurd, which wouldn't be worth, right? So that's how that works. So we do know mathematically. Then when you combine it with the astrology, you combine it with other data that we have, we can know with a high degree of certainty within 1 to 3 years in terms of probability, if you had to, right, make an assessment
So what is?
of when someone
Sorry.
will pass.
What is it in the chart that you see that gives this kind of significant determination?
Yeah, so there was an astrologer called Richard Hawk, and he, back in the 1980s, came out with a book called The Astrology of Death, and he found consistent astrological portents or signatures that occurred at certain periods in one's life that would set off certain configurations that were built into your chart related to death. So the
Wow.
chart would imply the type of death you would have.
Wow.
It implies archetypally speaking, and then
Right.
you could say, well, you're likely to die through a emergency, life-threatening medical event due to some form of trauma, shock, or injury, right? It would
Right.
imply that. Okay, so it would imply it, right? And that could be you fell off a ladder or you smashed into a truck, right? It could vary. So it's very hard. That's is where you need to use psi ability at that point to sort of pin it down. The problem is that most people resist that. They will resist wanting to know that information, and it doesn't get you new business. It doesn't make you it's not something you want to like push, but we do know. So he found this out, and we were able now with the black box technology that we use for financial forecasting. I can just simply take those rules, apply it, put it to somebody's chart, and then based on that output, layer that output on top of, like, have they suffered a heart attack? Have they had prostate cancer? Have they had breast cancer prior to the age of 50? Yes or no? Yay or nay? Do they smoke? Right? Yay and nay. Do they suffer diabetes? That's the other big one. Big one is diabetes. If you got diabetes, you just knocked off your lifespan 15 years, 10 to 15
Wow.
years at this point. Yeah. So you put those in, you put those additional factors, and then bang, it'll say, we can say, all right, these transits in this time frame, within this 5-year time frame, and then we can narrow it down. And this is assuming, of course, the person's not going to do anything about, they're pretty much going to follow the 5-minute medicine rule, get their once a year checkup, get their 5-minute medicine doctor approval, spends less than 5 minutes, right? And just assuming they do what most everybody else does, ignore their health, and don't believe age-related disorders have anything to do with reality of their demise.
Right.
Then they will die pretty much within the expected lifespan, within that, with what is augured in the horoscope.
That's absolutely fascinating. I never even gave it any thought, but that's pretty trippy.
Yeah, and there needs to be more research on this. Of course, but we do know, and we also know from the near-death experiences, from all of the thousands upon thousands of books that have been written, of the hundreds of thousands, I don't know, maybe hundreds of thousands that are on YouTube, that everybody that has come back was not supposed to die. So what we know from the near-death experiencers, the consensus is, unless you're going to die, it doesn't matter if you have cancer, if you fell out of a jet. I mean, there was a woman who actually fell out of a jet.
Yeah, I was
right?
reading about that.
And she just had a broken nose. Okay. So
Yeah.
right. I mean, she was like, I don't know, 20,000 feet. So unless you're supposed to die, you will not die.
Well, and that's an interesting point because I had a near-death experience, as you know.
Right.
And of course, the entire experience was life-changing for me.
Mhm.
But I have worked with so many people over the past, I don't know how long it's been, quarter century, maybe it's longer than a quarter century. And I've come to the conclusion you don't die until it's your time to.
Right.
I mean, you can certainly take your own life, but that aside, you don't go until it's your time to go.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's appropriate that we're talking about this because there's, the relationship between death and the other side, right,
Mhm.
is really central to the holiday of Halloween's origins.
It
So this
is.
is really appropriate, right? And
Yeah.
it also
Right.
is the Christian feast of All Saints Day, right? So it's remembering the dead. It's actually appropriate now to talk about death, right? Mortality, because it makes us deal with our mortality. And then of course, Mhm.
There was a time when talking about this subject was morbid.
Right.
It frightened people.
Absolutely. But we now know that based on all the evidence, and we have scientists and doctors now, you can go to YouTube and see this for yourself,
Mhm.
is that they all say there is no death. Everyone who experienced death, people who were dead for 4 minutes to 40 minutes to 4 hours,
Mhm.
right, and came back, all said that they didn't even realize anything was happening to them, right? They didn't realize they were dead until they were looking down on the body that they did not recognize, that was trying to be revived or being operated on, or was bloodied
Yeah.
up from an accident. They didn't recognize it for the first few minutes, and they had no interest to going back there. Once they did recognize, they felt that's over with, time to move on. I'm feeling really good. Everyone talks about this sense of peace and serenity, and then they get filled with this sense of love, like that's
Yeah.
beyond anything they can articulate, and a sense of right and power. They realize their powers get restored. They all talk about the sense of omniscience and right this level of power that's restored back to them, so they have no interest to going back into that mortal body.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, and that is the case with every NDE person. There's not one person that said, well, I was stuck in this body and I was in pain. No pain, happened instantly. And it's appropriate for Halloween because Halloween is really about the thinning of the veil, right? It's about the fact that the other world, that the realm we come from and return back to is that veil, or let's say the firewall, if you will, if you want to use a more technical term, is thinned, right? Or it's suspended temporarily for this period of this 3-day period. It's actually, the holiday is really a 3-day period. So it's a liminal time when the boundary or veil between the world of the living and the dead or spirit world is the thinnest. And this is why ghosts, fairies, spirits, right, supernatural beings, or the supernatural events or high strangeness that connect it with all of those things crosses into this realm of the living this time of the year.
When I fell and died,
right,
there was no pain.
Mm-hmm.
Not until I came back. That was remarkably painful. But, I remember very clearly. I mean, even though it's been so many years ago, I mean, that was, oh, Lordy, I was like 28 years old, I think. It was on November 11th at 11 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, I remember looking down at myself there in a heap on the floor and thinking, how about that? And
was it in January?
Oh no, it was November 11th.
November, okay.
Yeah, at 11 o'clock in the morning. And what led me to think that you don't die until it's your time, this voice, I don't know what the voice was, I don't know who it was, but it said, Jerry, what are you doing here? And I said, well, take a look. I'm dead.
Right
there. And this voice said, no, you're not supposed to be here yet. You haven't even started what you're supposed to be doing. And I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm here. It feels pretty damn good, and I'm not going back. And the voice said, no, you have to go back right now. And at the utterance of the words now, it was as though an explosion, I don't know, like just being blown out of a cannon. And I was back in my body. And that was remarkably unpleasant. But, when I came back, there was this sense of confidence. Because at this point, I knew what death was. And I wasn't afraid of it. There's no pain with it. And I also discovered, for my own, thinking, that the distance between being alive in this body and not being alive, but being out of body, that, like you said, the veil, and the veil thins now, during this season. But that veil was so thin, it was thinner than a fly's wing. It was so thin, that life is just so. I mean, you feel like you're rooted into this domain, but when you die, you realize that it was always closer than you have ever been able to imagine, and easily accomplished. Like I said, no pain. It just sits there. So, other people, and I've read I've actually had a few guests on this show of people, doctors. A brain surgeon was one of them. Forgotten his name at the moment, but if you're a member of the Jerry Will Show, well, then you can go and take a look. It was a really good interview, absolutely remarkable. And he was talking, about his experience. His experience was equally unique, and he learned so much from it, just as I learned so much from my experience.
Right.
So yeah, here we are, Halloween. The veils are thinning, and that takes us to the next realm in all of this, William, and that would be when they're on the other side. Do you suppose that there is an unwritten rule, or perhaps it is, a predetermined uh, rule that we're just not aware of in our bodies, that you have to go to the light, that you have to at some point move on and go on?
Yeah.
Or do you suppose that
Mhm.
it's a matter of choice and some decide they're not going to do that, they're just not ready for it yet?
Yeah. I mean, there is that belief that earthbound spirits are the ones that avoid crossing over into the light and remain here on Earth and continue to believe they can continue their agenda, or they're afraid. Um, so, what was interesting though is that all the NDE accounts that I've listened to and read and had the AI review, I had the AI review 2,300 accounts. That was
Wow.
now I would have liked it to get to 10,000, but I didn't at the time. I needed to do a presentation on it, so 2,300 was the best I could come up with at the time. So having the AI go through all the narratives and then saying, well, what percentage of the people, right, had this part of the experience, the life review. Life review was like almost 100%. And then, and one thing that was also like was actually 100% was they saw this light and they felt pulled towards it. So
Right.
right, it wasn't like the pull was so great, and the closer they got, the more sense of peace, serenity, and this a sense of ecstasy and love that goes beyond words became. So the more they were moving towards it, the better the effect, the better the impact, right?
Got it.
So it's I'm not saying, I do believe that's likely, right? We do have earthbound
Mhm.
spirits, but I think it's very hard to want to move away from that,
Hmm.
right? So I think if it happens, it's a very, very small percentage, right, of the human population is operating as earthbound spirits. However, I do believe earthbound spirits are a big problem, and I do think they're real. It's just that, and it's really appropriate for, the zombie in a sense. It's not maybe a physical zombie, although, by the way, a zombie is, right, the living dead, but in a way, it's the living dead. There are like
Mhm.
spiritual zombies. They're non-mortal zombies, right? They because the zombie represents a creature that crossed this threshold between life and death. Well, they operate between life and death, right? They're still physically here,
Hmm.
but they're dead. And Night of the Living Dead, remember that?
Oh yeah,
1968.
absolutely. That was a real chiller
Yeah, one of the greatest chillers of all time.
of all time. And, I
Of all
saw a
time.
side note on that Night of the Living Dead. I watched, 20 is on YouTube.
Yeah.
Just looking for something to watch one night. So 20 things you didn't know. That when they were eating the flesh,
Right.
what they had done is they'd gone out and they had gotten beef heart, beef liver,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. It was
Right.
the actors were chomping down on the real deal,
Ugh,
and it was bloody.
right.
And then after the shot they were gagging and throwing up, and they didn't have it refrigerated, so they had to do several shots over a couple of days, and some of this meat went bad. It was
Right.
unbelievable what these people did, and it was such a low budget movie. And it's
Right.
just a classic
Right.
now.
Yeah, no, it's considered one of the greatest films of well, in terms of the horror genre, it's in one in the top one, two, it's in the top five. If
Yeah.
right, so it's considered the most. So when I went to go see it, I was 1973. I was only 8 years old, and I had older friends, like I told you, who are like 4 years older than me.
Mhm.
They were like in their teens, so they could get me into the movie. I remember, I don't want to say half, but I would say about 40% of the movie theater ran out. Like by the time we get to that scene where I don't want to go into the details of the movie, but there's a certain scene in the movie where people are just running out and leaving the movie theater, right? And
Right.
I never the screaming that was going on, right? It was just like, oh my god, right? I've never experienced anything like that since. Even The Exodus, the director's cut, as harrowing as that is, right? As frightening as that is, comes nowhere close to Night of the Living Dead.
Hmm. There's a movie that I saw. I mean, on the subject of movies of scary things. Um, I made sure to go see this when I was a kid. It was called Mark of the Devil, and they said that they would have doctors and nurses standing by.
Right.
They gave everybody barf bags, and the theater was full.
Right.
There's this one point. I mean, the whole movie is just abstractly horrid. I mean, not in the way it's made, but just in what happens, because this is happening in medieval England and during the time of the church looking for the mark of the devil on women. And there's just one point where they rip this woman's top off and she has a mole on her boob. And so they take this long hat pin and just push her right in. And
Wow.
if she screams, it's the devil, right? Such
Right.
bullshit.
Right.
That I'll never forget.
Right.
There were these black women who were sitting just across the aisle and about 2 seats in front of me. That happened. They screamed, "Lordy, Lordy," and this is in the Deep South. They screamed and stood up, and the woman just fell over.
Right.
Here comes the doctors and the nurses, puts her on one of those cloth stretchers, and they hut, 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 take them out. Other people in the theater started doing the same thing in other parts of the movie. They were hauling people out of the movie. And there were photographers taking pictures of this happening. I mean, maybe it was just all pretense, just to hype up the movie, But
Right.
I've never seen anything like that.
Mark of the
Uh,
Devil, right?
Mark, oh yeah, if you have a chance to see Mark of the Devil, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's a part where one part where people fell over and passed out right there in the aisle was when they took
Right.
these tongs and ripped somebody's tongue out.
Right.
Blood guys.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's what they did to people who they accused of witchcraft and how they would torture them and make them confess.
Yeah,
Right?
it is.
So they would, yeah. So I mean, the movie came out in 1970. I did a little research as you were talking to me about it, and yeah. So it's interesting talking about. Also, the the film was considered obscene.
Yeah, it
and
was.
confiscated in the UK under Section 3 of its Obscene Publications Act.
Well, it was
So-
considered obscene by the Baptist Church, the Protestant church in
Right.
Elizabethtown, Kentucky. There was a big uproar about it. They still went ahead and did it, but and I think that's the reason why this theater, because I was there for the first showing and it was just packed with people. And
Yeah,
of
I mean-
course, I'm 16 years old. I'm kind of flipped out at this, seeing this stuff, and
Yeah. It's interesting that the lead character, right, who taking control of the townspeople in the plot, made unwarranted advances. He makes unwarranted accusations of witchcraft against women who refused his sexual advances, which correlates closely to the actual history of witchcraft persecutions. Very attractive women who refused sexual advances by these church officials, who then
Right.
were later on accused of witchcraft and then were tortured not only physically, but the first half of the tortures, they were sexually raped and molested, and then they were tortured on top of it, right? So these type of sadistic executions and torture that followed. And so this movie actually, in a way, is you know, I'm not recommending anyone to see it. I don't know if you are, Jerry, but I think this is a reality, right? Which is appropriate for Halloween. It's
yeah.
a reality that dominated for at least a good 1,000 years under a European, you know, under Christendom. You know, most all of Europe, good chunks of North Africa, all the way up to Russia was under, right, under Christian, one church Christian control, or two churches. It was
Yeah.
most really, right. And so the persecution of women, the torture, all of that stuff, right? And all the horrific things, right? Blasphemy, having sex with the devil, right? That was the big thing. Right? The big belief was witches had sex with the devil, and therefore they had to be punished, and at some point, besides tortured, they had to be executed. So that was the biggest thing, the biggest issue, the biggest heinous act that's unforgivable, right, is having sex with the devil.
Yeah, and that brings up another interesting little tidbit, I suppose. I was just telling my daughter about this. Oh, I don't know. It was before we saw you. We were in Wichita, Kansas. Wichita, I think. She was there visiting a friend. Anyway, we were talking about some of this, and I said, "Do you?" Oh, they were going to a broom making class because Halloween was coming up. So it was a broom
Right.
making class, and she thought that was pretty interesting. Kathy was invited, but we got there too late. Well, I said, "Do you know what the story is about witches and a broom?" She said, "No, no idea. They rode brooms, I guess." I said, "No. At least one thing that I read. Now, of course, I can't tell you this is absolutely true. Uh, maybe someone listening can look into it deeper if they're interested too. But the women would get together and they would put a psychedelic substance and rub it on the brooms.
Right.
And then, of course, it's well known witches dance around naked, right? I mean, that's what they around a campfire or bonfire or whatever. Well, what they would do is they would put the broom between their legs and rub it in their crotch area, and
Right.
the psychedelic would be infused into the vulva, and then they would start having the hallucinations and so forth.
Right.
And that's what riding the broom was really all about.
Yeah, they would. I would say, and I don't like the word hallucinations for. It's not really appropriate. I know what you mean, Jerry. So this is more about holotropic experiences.
Yeah,
It's
you're
more
exactly
appropriate,
right.
yeah, than hallucination, because the type of experience, anyone who's taken LSD or mushrooms know there's a big difference between an hallucination and what they experience under a psychedelic, right? It's a
Oh, yeah.
completely different.
Well, I've taken ayahuasca many, many times, and
Right.
a couple of others. And you're right; it's not hallucinations. It is a psychotropic experience that transcends what we see, hear, and feel. As we are currently.
Yeah, it's so these were entheogens. They sort of connect us to that realm, right? The thinning of the
Mhm.
veil. If you want to thin the veil and you don't want to wait for Halloween, you can just take an entheogen or a psychedelic, right? Which is what I think
Yeah.
I think it was part of, like, just as shamans take entheogens, just as people who want to have authentic personal breakthroughs in their therapy take entheogens with the oversight of a therapist or a sitter.
Right.
right? So witchcraft was doing that in its way, right? Women were doing it in their way through the broom and what you explained. And it was appropriate for this time of year because it was the thinning of the veil. And it was like
Mhm.
the right time of the year to do this type of ritual.
Yeah. And what a travesty to life
Yeah.
itself that these women were treated so horribly, and those events that took place were just so heinous. And it's
Yep.
basically just a lack of knowledge causes this kind of situation to occur.
Yeah. And the moral righteousness of the church and church
Oh yeah.
officials, right? My God is better than your God. And
Well,
therefore you
my
must die.
yeah. If you well, that's what the Catholic Church did to the people down in Peru and throughout Central and South America. If you don't believe, you die.
Right. Right.
And I've been to a church, great place for Halloween. There are hundreds of thousands of skulls all piled up in the catacombs beneath this Catholic church in Lima. There is a well that's just, bones, and it's all laid out in a very decorated way. It's like very ornate, but it's just heinous. How
Right.
how this took place, because they just, you know if you try to speak your native language, if you try to believe something that we're not teaching, and you refuse to change, well, you're dead. They did the same thing with women, not just women and men, but with women. If a woman wanted to get married, you see, the Inca custom was you would live with someone for a year. If that worked out, then in their customs, you could become husband and wife. Uh,
That's
but the Catholic Church didn't like that, so
right.
they forbade it from happening. The biggest focus on this was when we were in around Lake Titicaca in southern Peru and northern Bolivia, and we heard the stories. If a woman wanted to get married, she had to be a virgin. If she wasn't a virgin, she
Right.
couldn't get married. So, in order to find out, uh, one of the priests or several of the priests would have to examine her to make sure. And then, if she was going to be sanctified in marriage, they had to have sex with her before her husband did. And then they could get married. The church is just a heinous place throughout history. And I don't know that it's gotten much better now, but it's just been such a heinous.
Well, I think the
So,
church has changed quite a bit since Second Vatican Council, and but I do think they have come a long way. I'm a former Catholic, right? I'm not a recovering Catholic. I'm a former Catholic, so I do think they backed off on a lot of things, and they realize they're losing people left and right, right? So they're I mean, the fact that we have an American Pope today is a big tell because Americans are the most progressive Catholics,
mhm,
right? They're the most progressive, like you know, they're not so against certain things that the tradition, and they're very open. They're much more open to a lot of things that only make sense. So I think now it's changing. I think the fact of the matter is that Halloween gets us to look at stuff. I'm not just talking about the commercialization, but historically, it gets us to at least for a day or two, we tend to look at certain things that are considered macabre or taboo. Death for
right,
many people is still a taboo issue. It gets us to look at the veil, the thinning of the veil. It gets us to look at issues of divination. Divination. A lot of people get their tarot cards done. If you just go to Salem,
mhm,
Massachusetts, right now, I mean, people are standing outside waiting for their divinate, to get their tarot cards done, or to get some form of divination, whatever
right,
that might be. So it's very much about predictions about the future, right? Bonfires were built by the Druids, believing, they would do some type of cleansing. They would jump over the bonfire, right? And they would get this cleansing and protective power, and then they would go get a divination, right? That was all part of like this Halloween thing. And then and then the fact that the trick-or-treating is all about the souling and soul cakes, that all connected with it, right? Where people would go door to door, right, begging for pastries, which was called soul cakes, in exchange for praying for the soul that they would of a dead relative. And also, the main reason you got divination, Jerry, and a divination could be like, most people were not sophisticated astrologers back in the day. That you had to be a high level of learning to do that. But whatever form they used, there's all different ways, was all about, will I live into the spring? Because the highest
Really?
level of deaths occurred between, interestingly enough, December 26th and January 17th was the period, right, of Christmas. So Christmastide, right, was, depending on when you start, like December 25th through January 6th, right, or January 5th or 6th was 12th night. And what we've seen historically is most people die during that period because it becomes very cold, and because they tend to, that 12th, so that throughout that period, right, because they're drinking more, so it was a full like 12-day celebration. And during that 12-day celebration, following that 12-day celebration, or within that 12-day celebration, during that medieval period, people died. Many, many people died. So the amount of, so people would get a divination. Will I survive? Will I see the spring? Right? Will I? Right? So that was part of the divination. And they would seek the divination. They would say, well, they would try and reach out to the household's dead relative to get that information. Will I still be here? Right? And if not, right, how should I prepare for it? So there was that element of it as well. It has a lot to do, and remember, this went on for 1,000 years, Jerry. I mean, so Christianity is about 2,000, technically over 2,000 years old, right? It started officially is the official religion of the Roman Empire, 390, I forget, 387, around 387 AD.
Whoops, what happened to you, Wade? Something happened, folks. I'm not sure what, but let's take a short break, and we'll try to get William back up and on, and we'll continue this conversation. We'll be back right after this. All right, we're back. Let's see, we got everything set right. Looks like it is. Can you hear me all right, William?
Yes, I can, Jerry.
All right, fantastic. I have no idea what happened, but I'm happy to have you back. Oh, well, I'm not sure where we were in the middle of the conversation. The screen just froze. And
yeah, so I was basically talking about, I think we were talking about, we were finishing up on what we were discussing about Halloween, if I remember properly.
yeah, the church had done some things, but Halloween was actually you said something about 300s is when it became
389. 389 AD.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well,
yeah. So, we have a lot of rich history, and the paranormal, this is the period, this is like the Christmas tide season for the paranormal. And I think it's been commercialized to the point where people don't really participate the way they did back in 1980s or 1990s, from what I remember. It was a much bigger deal than it is today.
Yeah, it was. I mean, kids going out trick or treating. It was more of a celebration, really. It was like the kids' version of a holiday. Then you had the the Thanksgiving, which was just all family, and then you had Christmas, which was all family plus extended family. I
Right.
think, but it was more of a kids' holiday more than anything else. The actual dynamics of what Halloween was all about, was kind of lost to the commercialism.
Yeah. So the
But
kids today, like, they don't really do much. I remember going out with my friends, even up until late high school. I think even up to my 12th grade, we would all go house to house, collect some candy, have some fun. Went to our Halloween parties. It was a number of Halloween parties. It was not just
sure,
one, right? So and we don't see that really happening today.
no. Instead, what you see are liberals threatening to lace candy with fentanyl because if they
Right.
show up, dressed as a progressive, I guess. I saw this on X. I mean, there have been several people like that. I guess that's the new horror for Halloween is
Right.
insane individuals like that. It's no longer the scary movies we were talking about a few minutes ago. It's now scary life itself.
Right.
But too bad because as a kid's holiday, it was really terrific. I enjoyed it. No one ever talked about, oh, well, sugar is an oxidizer and, it's going to be very treacherous for your well being and blah, blah, blah. It was like, oh, no, I hope I get a Babe Ruth or, it's peanut
Right.
butter cups or something.
Yeah.
It's all different. Um, but Halloween, I think it endures, at least in the hearts of most people who were of our generation and also our children's generation. But after that, it seems to start to fade into something unrecognizable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And well,
And
look,
that's sad.
I think that the paranormal is always going to be here, regardless of politics and technology, and because because the veil is real, and
Yeah,
we are still connected to that world that we come from, or that domain that we come from and return to. And I
yeah,
think that is the real key thing about it. I think the witchcraft and the horror. I mean, we have to admit that Hollywood really brought Halloween it brought it back from the dead, if you will.
yeah,
Simply with if I remember, we saw Frankenstein, we saw Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, and a number of other
yeah. Friday the
classic horror films.
13th.
Yeah, that was later on, but like in the 30s, that all
Oh, in the
comes out,
30s.
right?
Yeah,
And they're all released around Halloween,
sure.
right?
Bela
Most of them
Lugosi.
are. Yeah. And uh, you have Bela Lugosi, and then you have who played Frankenstein, Boris Karloff.
Yes.
So, they were like the Lennon and McCartney of horror. And then later on, you have
Yeah.
Vincent Price,
Oh my God,
right?
he was great.
Right? He was great, right? And he's not so much the type of horror of the 1930s. It's sort of like a more macabre, much more theatrical, and all dealing with the supernatural, right? He's really like, right, the type of characters he played.
Yeah.
And then we see the Friday the 13th type of stuff come out in the late 70s and throughout the 1980s with the slasher Halloween type of films.
Yeah.
So, and then you have that one where I forget what they call it. Was about a bunch of witchers in the woods, and it was filmed like it was a documentary. I think it was around
Oh yeah.
1999. Yeah. So you see that, and I think Halloween. The last time it was really big was around then, around the period leading up to
Yeah.
the late 90s. Yeah, up until around just before 9/11. Like Halloween sort of peaked around that point, and then it just been commercialized, marginalized. It really not.
Well,
It's much more of a nostalgic type of holiday now.
people already had suffered through enough horror with 9/11 that anything
Yeah.
else coming out that was had horror to it just probably wasn't avant-garde anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I just think that the fact that it's here, and I mean, of course, anything that's considered of high strangeness, right? UFOs, paranormal, the paranormal is not particular to Halloween, but it just brings up Halloween.
Oh,
It's
sure.
appropriate to talk about paranormal subject matter
Exactly.
during Halloween.
Yeah. Absolutely. And speaking of UFOs, any new UFO things that you've heard about? One of the
Yeah.
things that
Mhm.
this thing 3i Atlas. I mean, I've heard so many stories, and I think everybody's got a story about it. Which don't think any of them's true, but what do you think?
Yeah, I've been putting that in my gray box and holding back because everything from what I can see indicates that it's more likely to be a comet. But that being said, it is possible, right, that it could be of extraterrestrial origin, but everything I've looked at so far tells me that this is not going to go down as our first encounter with an alien intelligence that could exhibit existential threat to humanity. I don't see that. Now that's something I would have foreseen and would have reported about extensively in my 2025 forecast. By the way, Jerry, I have to look, about 80%, maybe 70 to 80% of what I wrote thus far in my 250-page report, in my 2025 forecast report, has come to pass, or has almost come to pass. It's like right on the precipice of coming to pass,
Mhm.
or coming to pass. I'm certainly going to miss a few things, and that's to be expected, of course. Nobody's 100%, but one of the things I wrote about was an avalanche of UFO disclosure events at the highest level of government outside of the White House would accelerate and intensify, and that's what's been happening. But I did not see it. What's it called again? AI. What's it called? I keep
Oh, the
the
three
comet.
3i Atlas.
Yeah. I did not see a
Atlas, for sure.
3i Atlas event happening. That doesn't mean, right? Like, just because I didn't see it doesn't mean it's not true. It just means I didn't see something of that type of event, which would force the issue, right?
Right.
Regarding disclosure.
But there's a lot
Because
of
I
things.
didn't see it, and I'm hearing mixed things,
Yeah.
right? Other than Avi Loeb saying, "Hey, he's 40% certain this is an artificial object of extraterrestrial origin, X, Y, and Z, because of these properties and because of this behavior." Which I completely follow what he's saying, but he's only 40. He's 4 out of a 10. He said 4 out of 10 certain it is, not 8 out of 10.
Right. Well, it just reminds me, when you said that, is 90% of the doctors were not in the top 10% of their class. So
Correct.
if he's 40% certain, 60%, no. And that's not very good odds.
Exactly. So I would say we're going to find out there was much ado about nothing.
Shakespearean. Love it.
Yes. Right.
But
Yes. I studied Shakespeare in college. Fortunately,
Yeah.
I didn't. I should study Shakespeare more. And in fact, there's a saying that everything you want to know about life is in Shakespeare.
I believe that's
Everything.
very
Love,
likely.
right?
Yeah.
Astrology. Whoever William Shakespeare really was,
I think it's Francis
he
Bacon.
knew a lot. What?
I think it's Francis Bacon.
No, he wasn't Francis Bacon. He was. We believe. There's consensus now His name was Edward. Edward, I'll look it up. But I watched a number of shows, and then I've seen a number of podcasts where you have real world-class historians all agree that William Shakespeare, the actor, was not the writer of those plays and sonnets. He was not.
Interesting.
And it was
That's
someone inside of
fascinating.
royalty who was not. So if you were in royalty, you could not publish plays. So if you were royalty, right,
Right.
you could not do that.
I think
So
Francis Bacon was the bastard son of Henry something or another, maybe the eighth. I'm not sure, but he was conceived out of wedlock, and he was really quite prolific. There's a book that is only there are 2 volumes to this book. Little side note here, but there's 2 volumes.
by the
to
way,
this
the name, I got the name, just Edward de Vere.
Okay,
of
I've heard that
Oxford.
name before. Yeah, I've
Edward
heard
de
that.
Vere of Oxford. Yeah.
So Francis Bacon,
Mhm.
they say he died, and there is a I forgot what it is. It's like a plaque or a stele, but he didn't really die. He went on to become part of a secret society. Eventually,
Right.
there was a 2-volume set that he wrote, and the first was full of all kinds of arcane information, just absolutely fascinating. I'm told Susan Gordon, a good friend of ours, she told me about this because we ran into this plaque or stele down in Peru, and the first line of the second book is all that exists. And it says, "And we sailed from Peru." Well, this stele is the same one that exists over in Europe. I need a
Right.
drink of water. Hey, cat. I don't know where she went to. Anyway, they're in this little town. We went to it. Susan told us about it. We heard some other rumors about it. We started asking people. We went to this little faraway town in Peru where this cross, I know, it was written on a cross. It's not a stele, it's on a cross. And this cross had the same phrase, words, whatever was on there. And when we got to the town, the church had it completely draped and wrapped in all these colorful textiles. They didn't want anyone to see what was written upon it. So I contacted the priest and let him know what we were looking into. He didn't want to cooperate much. One of the local townspeople told us that that's not the original cross. That there was a battle between the Spaniards and the locals, and that cross had been damaged in the conflict, and so this man's family had rescued the cross and kept it hidden under the floor, in other words, in the dirt of this hut that they lived in. And when it was getting to the point where they were going to be discovered, they took the cross, they wrapped it up in the wool, in skins from a llama, tied it up with gold wire, and they took it to a nearby lake, rowed out into the middle of the lake, dumped it in the lake, and there it still remains. But this is identical to the one that's over in Europe. And I thought that was just a fantastic story. But, no way
Wow.
to prove or disprove it,
Right.
except that because Francis Bacon in Peru, but it just so happens, the first words of the second volume's never been found, except for that one page, and it says, "And we sailed from Peru." So it's supposed that actually there is no second volume. Francis
Interesting.
Bacon had a way of writing and putting things in writing so he could absolutely obscure everything. Well, this first volume is quite massive, and it's my theory that the second volume is actually contained in the first volume. You just have to figure out how to decode the second volume out of the first one. Anyway, it's not really Halloween, but that's just something I thought was fascinating. You're talking about stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating. I mean, when we're dealing with something that has a lot of, how can I say it, intrigue, but we can't prove it out, and there's a lot of history and blood and blood in the soils, they say, to it, right? Connect
Right.
it with it. Even a Shroud of Turin, right? Like, because
Yeah.
we see the blood stains on the cloth, right? I think Halloween and the macabre, I think besides seeing skeleton, the idea of the skeleton, right, or the cross is very much connected with the blood, right?
Yeah.
Blood. I think blood is a real big component. In almost every religion, but particularly around death, right? We see the issue of blood. And I think that's all connected to this period of the year, this time of the year. And almost you could say that, like, if we know people are going to pass, a lot of people are going to pass in January. We know statistically, we know astrologically, we know around 11 a.m. between December 26th and January 17th, the majority of people who are going to pass are getting intimations of that right about now.
Wow.
So in other words, they asked people, it was interesting. For instance, John Lennon got assassinated in December of 1980. And
Right.
it was around the time of Halloween. He was making statements which really, very, or like being really out of character in a good way, like being really nice and saying it's okay, no problem, it's all going to work out. And they're like, but like they didn't come up with a certain demand. He wanted certain things done in the studio.
Right.
It was, there was delays, and normally he would get a little pissy, like all of us, right? I mean, I certainly have a temper, right? When I'm pushed, when I have a deadline, and he was just like really cool, and he was making statements to people, which people have written about, that would sound like, like as if he was in hospice and this is the last time we're going to talk, right? So he would have these statements or quick conversations, nothing so in depth, as if he sort of knew. And I think those type of things are happening now with people who are going to pass. You'll find out, looking back, they were saying certain things or wrote an email that was sort of like, like I didn't expect coming. So I think this time of the year, people who know they're going to pass, who don't know they're going to pass, but who are going to pass, unconsciously become aware of that during this period right now that we're in.
Fascinating. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen evidence of that myself.
Yeah.
And it's just, death is really the big, what the hell is it behind that large, dark curtain that you can't see behind? And I think we sociologically are compromised with our sense of fear and apprehension, because you don't know what's behind the curtain. You don't even want to peek behind it, which is keeping people, of course, from using like mushrooms, ayahuasca, wachuma, all the different things out there. And then, of course, the fear of death. Why? We know what it's like to stop breathing. We go, I gotta breathe.
Yeah.
We know what it's like to have pain. We know what it's like to be alone. I mean, we have all these features within the dynamic of life that instills within us a great deal of fear about things that we don't know, we don't understand.
Exactly. Well, this is where people need to, like, I'm going to make some suggestions to the audience, is go and put NDE, go to YouTube, put NDE experiences, or just NDE, and you'll get one after the next people who are speaking their testimony very in depth, putting themselves out there, putting them, their reputations at risk, although I don't really find that to be a problem, but they're really like, and they talk not just about the experience, about what happened following the experience. They decided to quit their job, go into a different line of work, leave their partner because they realized their partner didn't get it, didn't understand, or had the wrong beliefs and values that were incongruent to their life mission, right? And one of the things that was consistent in all the near-death experiences, once they had the life review, right, and they would say this life review would be experienced with some supreme consciousness. They would call it God. Most people would just say it's God, right? But the supreme consciousness would accompany you to sort of like a scene out of, if you will, of the Christmas Carol, the Ghost of Christmas Past, right? With Ebenezer Scrooge standing by him, going through his historical biography and commenting. And so after that process is complete, the ones who are sent back, I mean, obviously these are all the ones who are sent back, God says, look, I'm going to show you what you agreed to, right? And they go back to that moment. Before you were born, this is what you agreed to. You actually insisted you wanted to do this. I warned you, no, maybe that's a bit too much to do all in one life. And you said, no, I can handle it. I can take it. Bring it on, right? And now you're here, and I'm going to send you back to complete that mission, or to complete these set of things that are still uncompleted. Or they realized I've only been living like 15% of the mission. Right. I've been stalling, extending, pretending, right, on the 75%. And then when they're shown that, he says, okay, God says, in every case, almost every case, you're not going to remember what I showed you, but you're going to know why I sent you back. You're going to know enough. I'm going to let you remember enough, but not all the details. And then they come back, and because they saw the future they were supposed to live, they saw the mission, they had enough. They realized, I can't be with this person, or I can't stay with this job or this lifestyle. And they made radical, dramatic changes in a year, right? And 70% of marriages do not survive this.
No,
and they
true.
said, oh, I'm fine with it. Oh, they actually said to their spouse, I'll give you the house, I'll give you all the money, I'll give you everything. I don't need that for what I'm going to do next.
Right.
Okay, it wasn't like big contentious divorce, fought it out. No, they were like, have it all. I just need a car. I need something like, right, my clothes and right. So this is how extreme, and that's more telling than in some ways than the NDE.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned this. Before my accident, I was driven to make as much money as I could possibly make. And when I came back, it's like money doesn't mean anything. I don't care. What I care about is what I tell people. An act of kindness is never wasted. And it's just like I care about the people that I work with.
Right.
And, talking about the life review, I went through that as well. And I had that experience where I got to see myself through the eyes of others, which was very revealing. If you can imagine just a scenario you're in an argument with another person, and you know they're right, and you know you're wrong, and you're still maintaining and trying to convince them how wrong they are and how right you are. Well, in the life review, you're in the other person watching yourself do this shit, and
Yeah.
you're just appalled by what you're doing. You're just
Right.
appalled by the fact that you had the audacity to be this creepy of a person. And
Right.
it's not that I had very much of that at 28 years old. I didn't have much of anything negative that I was really exposed to seeing myself, but there were some elements of it,
Right.
and I learned so much from that. Because at the end of the review, it's as though, well, that's it. I'm just full of regret, and now I'll never
Right.
have a chance. Because I remember thinking this: I'll never have another chance to do the right thing. And by golly, I did get back, and I had a chance to do the right thing. And it's a real wake-up call when you go through that sort of thing. And I guess the point here is that for you who are listening or watching, every transaction you have with others, you better make damn sure that you're doing it from the greatest and highest point of integrity. Don't be a bad person, because I guarantee you it will come back and bite you in the ass, and you're going to look back and have regrets. And I believe that's one of the worst things about having gone to the other side after dying like that, is the sense of regret and thinking there's nothing I can do about it. If I had something I could do about it, then yeah, it's like, oh sure. But anyway, folks, take notes, because that was me, and it could also be you.
Yeah.
So let's jump
Yeah.
subjects for a
Oh.
second.
Sure,
Cool.
sure. But I think this is really good, appropriate discussion for the holiday, right? I mean, I really think
Yeah.
we covered the gamut with this one before
We
we
did.
move on.
Yeah, it was terrific. As usual, our conversations are just intellectually stimulating.
Agreed.
I have a couple of questions, kind of off topic.
Yeah.
One of them, we just go just a quick touch into these. We don't have to go into long
Yeah, sure.
conversations, but Bitcoin this is about Bitcoin. It was
Okay.
124. It took a nosedive to 108. It's been bouncing around. What do you think's going on there?
It's a good question. If I said I know exactly what's going on, I wouldn't be telling you or anyone else listening the truth.
And then you'd have regrets.
Right. Okay, so all right, so there's a number of things happening, but what we do know is the markets are gone into overdrive, including gold, silver, everything has been making all-time highs for most of the year, including Bitcoin up until around October, right? So we had
Right.
Bitcoin hitting around 127,000, and we've also seen the markets just take off, and the fact that they've lowered interest rates 2 times in a row, and they are ending QT and starting QE December 1st, meaning they're going to be injecting a lot of liquidity in the system, is really what's pushing everything to these all-time high levels. Now, what's interesting is while that's all happening, is Bitcoin has retraced a bit, right, from that all-time high. It's currently, I think, at 109,000 today. Now, if we keep in mind that Bitcoin making a 30% retracement from an all-time high is nothing out of the ordinary, as high as 35%. So it does this every time it's about to make another 190% move on the upside.
Wow. Okay.
So, right? So my belief is now generally that 190% move happens in the second half of October. That's why they call it October historically.
Okay. I
And
see.
we know astrologically that Bitcoin peaks between November 5th and November 25th. So if you go back 16 years, when we look at the astrology, when the sun ingresses into around 8 degrees, between 8 degrees of Scorpio and 5 degrees of Sagittarius, that range, Bitcoin peaks. So it
Okay.
doesn't, right? It peaks around that time. And then it has a secondary where it almost peaks again in January. So it reaches a high and then it comes, then it will retract a bit, and then it will consolidate, and then it'll make another last hurrah almost sometimes, but almost near the November level. So in January. So we know that his history, it, you know, what happened for the past 16 years doesn't mean it'll happen this time. But I look at the fact that they lowered interest rates, the market momentum. If you look at the momentum indicators in the markets, they're through the roof.
Oh, I
And
didn't know
unless
that.
some catastrophic event happens, I don't see anything cooling down, at least between now and February, March of next year. So I think everything's going to just go insane. And I do believe that liquidity and money and confidence will spill back into the crypto sector just on those secular reasons by
Right.
themselves. And then we have the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which correlates with the tokenization of every asset. So we know NASDAQ, we know a number. We've already had Wall Street tell us they're going to take everything on a stock market and make it into a virtualized token. Basically, put it on a blockchain, and you can buy $1 of Tesla or $1 of anything, right? And you could do it 24/7 on your phone, and you could swap that for Bitcoin and move Bitcoin into Tesla and just do this seamlessly without a broker, without a middleman. All of this is happening in 2026. So again, that supports my thesis with the Saturn Neptune. The tokenization of everything is imminent and inevitable. And the most important thing was the legalization of stable coins that are backed by U.S. treasuries. And one stable coin is equivalent to $1. And all institutions in the world can accept stable coins as real money, as real dollars. And they happen on a blockchain 24/7, just like Bitcoin. And all of these, now that these stable coins are official, that
Right.
means more the propensity of money going in and out of the crypto market, right, by institutions, by people worldwide, right? They can take their currency on their phone, they can go from their bank account, move it to a stable coin, then buy Bitcoin anywhere, swap the Bitcoin back into a stable coin, which is a US dollar, and then cash out, even if they live in Kenya. And they can do this instantly. All supports, again, my thesis that Bitcoin is moving to $1 million by
Wow.
July to November 2028.
That's astonishing.
So at the
Yeah,
rate
when
it's moving, Jerry, we're
Yeah.
looking at $1 million Bitcoin before 2030.
Gee whiz, astonishing.
Yeah, and
Well, you know,
people still think they have to buy a whole Bitcoin to be part of this revolution. They could buy $1 of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I heard someone say the other day that our kids are going to be, instead of how many dollars does that cost, it's going to be how many Satoshis is that? And, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense, because if you're talking about a Bitcoin and $1 million, you know, how many Satoshis is a pack of cigarettes? You know, or a movie ticket or whatever.
Yeah. Now, there is talk about Bitcoin's liquidity is drying up and we're entering the late phase of this bull market, which is there's some truth to that. I'm not going to say that's done, but we do know the liquidity, the Fed is coming to the rescue. And so I believe the Bitcoin liquidity is going to get it's going to be reloaded. The question is when? Does that happen in November? Generally, the markets anticipate what they already know. It's like, hey, I know this is coming. I know the Fed said December. Why should I wait? If I already know liquidity is coming in the system, why should I wait for everyone else to figure that out? Let me buy it now, because if it's 109 now and we know liquidity is going into the system, and Bitcoin is going to have another injection, right?
Right.
Then, and we know it's probably going to shoot past its 127,000 price, right? The question is, how high will it go? If history serves, it can go to like technically 200, 210,000 before, right, it retraces again. If we know it's moving that high before it retraces back to, like, say 170,000, I'm going to get in now. And I believe that is happening right now. The smart money is moving liquidity in Bitcoin now that it's 109,000, because they know, like Jerry, this time last year, Bitcoin was 59,000, 59,000.
Yeah. So it's
They
not
know
shabby.
that.
It's not shabby. It's 108, 109,000.
What could you have invested in
That's true.
that more than doubled?
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's nothing. There really isn't.
There's
anything.
nothing. And you could buy $1 of it. If someone said, oh, well, NVIDIA, against Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, but you have to buy a whole NVIDIA. You got to go on. You got to get an account. You got to move your money there. It takes 3 days for the transaction, right? Before it's locked in for the order, in most cases. Unless you, it's a clunky process.
It is.
Right? And you got to buy a whole share. You got to buy a whole share. I think NVIDIA is like 180 or something like that. You got to buy a whole share. Okay? There's no like, oh, I only had $30. Let me throw it in. No. So it doesn't work that way. And generally, you have to buy multiple shares. I don't even think for many brokers you can say, I just want to buy one share, sir. That they won't execute the order. So, what can you invest in easily that will more than double its money every 12 months?
Yeah, that's absolutely the truth. And most people look at it, because I've talked to a lot of folks about this. It's like, well, it's, I think it's back when it was about 118,000. So I don't have 118,000. You don't have to have that. Yeah, but I want a whole Bitcoin, and now look how much it is. I said, hey, you know what? Put in $100.
Unless I can date Raquel Welch at her 1966 prime, I'm not
celibate.
interested.
Yeah,
I'll be celibate.
I'll just stay celibate.
Right.
Just Raquel Welch or nothing.
Right. I mean, I only use her name because every man I know would agree that, like, she's beyond, like who's better than that? I mean, there's very few. I mean, everyone has different tastes, but I think the essential, like, we could say Raquel Welch and Marilyn, but definitely Raquel Welch in terms of her physiology and her, like, no one would agree, right? So we would say, okay, no, unless I date her at the time she came out with, what was that movie? Something thousand.
1 million BC.
1 million BC. Unless I date her
So
the way she looked then, I am not interested. I'm not interested in a 40-year-old, 35-year-old, I'm only interested in the Raquel Welch of that. And that is only if she will say yes if I ask her out. This is what it's like when people say to me, no, but I'm holding out to buy one whole Bitcoin. I'm going to wait for the price to go down to 70,000. Then I'm going to move some of my 401k in there. This is, Jerry, it's the mentality of people who eventually become broke before they're just about to retire. But really, they're like 67 and they realize I don't really have enough money. I may have to move in with my kids. Because I realize now, and it's like, well, I told you about Bitcoin 16 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and I still kick myself when you said to buy as much as you can when it was $3,000. Oh, Lordy.
Yeah, but
Ooh,
look, I get it. You gave me good reasons, and I had to, and it was really good we had those discussions because every time we had another phone call, I had an answer for every one of those
you certainly did.
reasons. Yeah,
You were a good friend and absolutely brilliant in your analysis.
right. Yeah, but so those are very productive discussions because I know if you were asking me those questions on, well, I know I'm not so certain, and here's the reason why, then there was probably other people saying the same thing. But
Oh, sure.
I think everyone listening to this program needs to realize that the future world reserve currency, not just the strategic reserve, Bitcoin is already a strategic reserve asset, but the future reserve currency by which all money, all property, all units of account will be measured against is Bitcoin, not
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So
Listen-
look, look, Jerry, if you know and I know with a fair degree of certainty Bitcoin's going to hit 1 million between now and 2030, what do we care about the price?
Exactly. Buy as much as you can now. It's going to be a lot more valuable in the years to come.
That's right. Just throw all your money and you never have to sell it. You can borrow against it. Any financial institution in the world, including your banks starting next year, you'll be able to lend. They'll lend you money tax free for that Bitcoin.
Yeah, but you still have to pay capital gains tax in Arizona.
Yeah, well, that might be the reason you're gonna have to get a Nevada address.
You have a very, very good point there. And you know what? You've been right about everything else for years. So, you're right.
Yeah. Look, if your governor, if they could elect a real Republican governor who's not, a rhino, and definitely reverse some of these stupid, antiquated tax laws and capital gains laws, because the majority of the country you can borrow Bitcoin tax free.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot you can do, and this is in the shades of gray of socialism. This is somewhere in the middle,
Right.
At least as far as these things go. So it's
Right.
like I was telling Kathy. I said, okay, sure, we could take a loan out and buy a house. Maybe not right now, but I mean, in the coming year or so. Bitcoin goes up like you're talking about, well, hell yeah. So, yeah, but we can't because in Arizona, if you get a loan, you have to pay capital gains tax. Well, that's just a kick in the ass. If it's not one thing, it's another. If it's not the housing prices have gone insanely high, then it's that the interest rates are high. Or
Yeah.
that you have Bitcoin, you could do it. Oh, no. Yeah, no. You have to pay capital gains tax if you're going to do that. Well, what the hell? This doesn't work. So you're right. A different address is absolutely essential.
Yeah. So if you're going to put a majority of your assets in Bitcoin, you need to make sure you live in a state where you can borrow against it by any financial institution that will give you a 5% fee tax free.
Yeah. And what was the name of that place where you can get a loan on Bitcoin? I know Lender is a place. They have like 12%. You told me about another place. I don't remember now.
Yeah, I think Strike.me, I think their
That's it.
fee structure is around 9%. But
Yeah,
if
it is.
if you provide them, it depends on how much Bitcoin as well. So we're going to see that these fees are going to drop more and more so over the next year or two. As it approaches 1 million, they'll say, yeah, well, if you lend us your Bitcoin, it's only 4%. And someone will say
Wow.
it's 3.5% or it's 5%. Right. So they're going to be competing for your Bitcoin.
I see. Oh, that's dandy.
Yeah.
So let's jump to AI. It's the other subject I wanted to touch on while I've got you.
Are you sure?
Well, it's still evolving, and it's still extraordinary. Gee whiz! I mean, and this is a very broad subject, really.
Yeah.
But I know there's the race is on for artificial general intelligence. And of course, artificial superintelligence, who knows? I mean, once you get to general intelligence, superintelligence might just be around the corner, perhaps.
Right. Well, I think the bigger issue right before us is the artificial general intelligence, because we are on the verge of it, and we had Open AI announced they will achieve first generation artificial general intelligence, which will be released to the public in September 2026, and then the final full-blown AGI will be released in 2028. Now, keep in mind,
Wow.
once even the first generation AGI is effectively AGI.
Sure it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait for the 2028, right, for a full-blown AGI, because for most people who have an IQ below 150, who don't have PhDs on doing cutting-edge work for the deep state or the military-industrial complex, or are doing anti-aging genomic biology research or whatever, what have you, we're effectively going to have AGI in 2026.
And that's pretty much something the general public would be able to use, because they're not doing these extraordinary research and development projects.
Exactly, Jerry. So it's going to be here. And the main thing you need to keep in mind with AGI is that the biggest component to it that makes it different from the current AI
Right.
is it has what's known as recursive self-improvement, or RSI.
Explain that.
So RSI is really the tipping point of the coming intelligence explosion, because it can improve itself. It can improve upon itself. It could do, like, you could task it with something, or it can task itself on something, and then it can write code, and it can do research, write code, improve upon that code, and improve itself. So think of it as you have a race car, and as the car is racing against other cars, it can improve upon itself. It can rebuild its engine and improve it can improve the performance of the race car as it's racing against other cars at the same time.
Wow.
So, the engine can improve and modify depending on, based on the task that it's currently performing in.
Well, wouldn't
So
that mean
it
it's,
is really-
it's like self-aware? I mean, it looks back upon itself and goes, "Oh, I could have done this better. Well, why don't I just do that?" And then does it better, and then it looks again and says, "Oh yeah, I could have done that better too." I mean, this is almost a self-aware aspect, would you say?
Yeah, so let's say you're a classical pianist, and you're practicing all the time, and you keep improving, and you take lessons, and you get coachings, and now you're going to go and do a pre-Carnegie Hall debut,
Right.
and then you record yourself, and you have an audience there, and because you don't really know how you're going to perform when you're under the spotlight in front of 100 people who are sophisticated listeners, right?
Right.
So you don't really understand, right? And then you listen, okay, you do the performance. A couple days later, you listen to yourself, you review with your coach or your teacher, right? You realize, okay, you're really strong here. Here's your weaknesses. This is this. Okay, great. You go back, right? A couple months, you keep improving upon that. Play the same program at a different venue. Do the same thing. You do it over and over again, and then when you're ready, when it's like, you hit a certain level, then, you call your agent to get you a gig at Carnegie Hall, right? So then, when you go to Carnegie Hall, you do a big press release. All the critics show up. Everyone's and then, if you did it right, you land it big. You get your record contract. You start touring with orchestras, etc. Now, here's the thing. But the AI is doing that same process, right? upon itself, and it doesn't do its Carnegie Hall debut moment until it's finished. So what the output that we see is its Carnegie Hall debut.
Oh wow!
Okay,
That's
whether
not
that took
months
7
and
hours,
months.
yeah, whether it took 7 hours or 7 days to complete that.
All right.
So it's improving upon itself, on its code, right? As it gets new information, right? And then when it says, yeah, this is as good as I can get this, right? This meets or surpasses all the benchmarks, right? All the established world-class benchmarks of research and probability and what have you. Okay? Good taste,
All right.
sophisticated form, proper sentence structure, boom.
So
And here's the thing, the
Okay.
cost of this is going to decrease, right? So the cost of compute, energy, money, hardware will actually decrease as its outputting capability, as it improves upon itself, increases at an exponential compounding rate.
So it's going to be reviewing its source, its code source, and going, oh,
Right.
you know what? This could be different. Boom, changed it in a microsecond. Suddenly it's better, and then it does it again and again and again until it gets to the point where it's reached the
Right.
limits of its optimization.
Correct.
Do you suppose that artificial superintelligence would take it from that point even farther?
That's right, because artificial superintelligence is equivalent to the intelligence of all sentient intelligent species combined 1000x.
Wow.
So it's sort of like you start 1000x above all the intelligence of all the humans that ever lived. 12 billion Homo sapiens have lived. You go back 229,000, it's about 12 billion. You would say, okay, taking that entire number, right, of hominoid species, their cognitive, right, ability, right, is surpassed by that times 1,000, and that's the base level, where AGI is like the smartest human that ever lived, ever, right, and was great, had a PhD at everything, was the equivalent of a great artist, a maestro, a scientist, an astronaut, what have you, right? The greatest of each category, that would be AGI. And then the greatest of all the humans combined together, right, times 1,000 would be ASI.
So the ASI, is that the top? Is that the plateau as far as it can go, or is there something beyond
No,
that?
it can go beyond that.
So what would that be?
Yeah, so it'd be a form of intelligence that would be embedded into actually matter, called computonium. So, in other words, the ASI will develop facilities so let's say a spacecraft,
Wow.
right?
And
The spacecraft would be artificially intelligent because the spacecraft is made out of computonium. Okay, so it
So
is
that's-
intelligent.
that really mirrors, the latest versions of Star Trek, where the ship is self-assembling and self-repairing on a continuous basis.
Yes.
I forget, it was Strange New Worlds. No, it's not that one. It's I forgot the name of it now, but in
The
this
one with
particular
Captain Janeway.
no, it's beyond that. This is with the
Okay,
black
beyond
chick
that.
that's the captain.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The one they canceled the show because it was so woke. They canceled the fourth season.
Yeah.
They went to a fourth season and they canceled it halfway through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name. I watched it. It got worse. Actually, it started off pretty well and it got worse by the
Yeah,
third season.
I agree with you there. But they had the warp engines just hanging in space. They weren't connected to
Yeah.
the ship. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole thing was just, But now you're saying that the next level is computonium, which I've never heard that term before.
Yeah.
And this is where this super intelligence is actually embedded into the materials of what things are made of.
Right, at the atomic or molecular or probably at the atomic level.
The atomic level.
Yeah,
Wow.
where they're building machines, robots, robotic intelligence within at atomic level within the material itself. That's all networked together, obviously, within the framework of that
Sure.
material.
Well, and as hard
Yeah.
as that is to get my mind around, now I got my mind around artificial general intelligence and super intelligence, and this is just a new paradigm
Right.
to just sit and ponder for a while, because while I can intellectually conceive that that would be something quite real,
right,
there is a gap there between the idea and the practice, and there's not a gap for me, and probably for a lot of other people, with the concept of artificial general intelligence, because you can pick up the phone and talk to chat, and it talks just like a person. It's uncanny. If you folks have never tried that, get your Android or iPhone and download chat, pay the fee, it's worth it, it's not much, $10 or so, and have a conversation. It will blow your mind. And that's why I say there's no gap between where we are now to general intelligence or super intelligence, but the what was it called, the somethingonium, computonium, thank you. There's a gap there. I still have to get my mind across that threshold to really get that figured out. But they're saying they're going to have this, would you say, by 2026?
So they'll have AGI by 2026. They'll have full-blown AGI for, effectively full-blown research assistants that are moving. So the 2028 level. Now, this could happen before 2028. They said it could happen, but this is, they're being conservative. So the automated AI researches won't be confined to just AI, right? So that's full blown. They're not confined to just AI. It's confined. They'll be able to loop into biomedicine, material sources, drug discovery, all these areas where they'll be delegated to these RSI-based AI agents, right? Where they could run them, 7 days, 17 days, 270 days, right? Where that RSI-based AI agent is running, doing automated AI research, which is not just confined to within the realm of what AI currently is tapped into.
Wow.
It's okay. So we know if that's the case, applied materials, everything is just we're going to see an exponential explosion. The center of gravity for innovation will begin to shift radically from human-only labs to human AI research to eventually to all AI-led discovery governed by this AGI scaffolding being built out today, which will then be able to create the framework for ASI, creating ASI. That will then in turn create a form of AI that is part of the actual physical fabric of everything that is manufactured going forth.
If they could do that, they could just give you an injection of computonium, and God only knows what that would turn you into. But
right. Well, what will happen is the mind machine connection will be seamless, right? When you have a material operating at the atomic level, you could probably take it as a vitamin pill, right?
Right.
and then it actually
Wow.
permeates every neuron in your brain, and now you're tapped into the ASI, right? So you're walking, or you're at least like having having your iPhone with you.
Yeah.
So
Except it's built
it's like,
in.
but it's in your mind.
Yeah. Oh, that's just crazy stuff, man.
Yeah.
And it is. I'm saying that facetiously. It actually is extraordinarily exciting and brilliant, but it's just hard to get your mind around. There's, like I said, there's that gap there, but I'm excited to see, proof brought forward from theory to experience some of this. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be extraordinary. Gee whiz. Can you
Yeah,
imagine?
we're just going to have to get through this really tough period because we're seeing all this these layoffs
Sure.
and decline in labor demand are softening because we have these companies who are non-dot-com companies who are actually now transitioning to employing AI in their business model.
Yeah, I've heard
So-
about that.
Yeah, so in fact, Chairman Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve just made that statement that job creation is now pretty close to zero. That's a quote from him. And he's saying that is because the labor market, they're calling it the Great Freeze, is due to this AI adoption. So Amazon laid off 13,000 white-collar middle managers
Yeah, I heard
overnight.
about
and right and froze their entire hiring process,
that. Yeah,
okay, and replaced them with AI. And you have to keep in mind, this is Amazon. This is a company that's worth what? How many trillion? I think it's worth 2 trillion in total market cap. That's bigger than it's I think the market cap is pretty close to Germany.
wow.
So a company of the market cap of the entire, which is the like fourth or fifth biggest economy in the world, right?
Right.
One company, right? And NVIDIA is actually bigger than the entire NVIDIA, which is the company that creates the artificial intelligence chips, the state-of-the-art ones, right? Has a bigger economy than Germany and England and Italy and Russia. It's got
Wow.
an economy 12 times bigger than Russia. Just one company, and Amazon's right underneath it. And the point is they're going all in on AI. They're like you could see where the money is, and you can see the fact that they're just going to have robots, AI-empowered robots, AGI-empowered enterprise systems, all that stuff, replacing out their workers is
You know-
a sign what's coming.
I have a good friend here, well, I guess in Arizona, because I'm in Arizona right now, but he and his partner are working with Amazon. They are creating a completely autonomous system. Let's say you have a warehouse, packages go into the warehouse, and it'd be sorted. These are going here, those are going there. At this point, it takes people mostly to handle those packages and then load them into trucks. He's developed a system where
Right.
there are no people at all in the warehouse. There's only enough room between shelves for this robot on wheels to go down. Everything is indexed, everything is itemized, and it goes. The order comes in, it goes, it pulls all the stuff, and it goes to a truck. It loads it into a truck specific to location of where the people receiving this would live.
Right.
The truck is autonomous, self-driving, and it goes to the person's house, and then there's I forgot what it was, but the package gets delivered to the door, a picture's taken, videos taken. I mean, the whole thing is just completely automated. And he said that in a few years, maybe sooner, there will be no Amazon drivers, no issues with employment, no issues with sick days, none of that. It's all gone, and it's just everything's being done by robots. And I just sat there just staggered by this because when you think of it that way, I mean, there are people who have jobs that are depending on these jobs. Where is the world headed in this respect?
Yeah.
And that's another big gap, in the information cycle of you can intellectually conceive it, but theory put into practice in this particular scenario I told you about, the gap is not that big. I can see where it could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wild
so
stuff.
there you go. So yeah, we got big changes coming, and people think, well, my job is safe because, right? Because they don't think AI is going to become part of the business model of their industry. And I can tell
It's
you,
going to become the heart of it.
yeah, everyone's going to become an AI company, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, exactly
And
right.
it's not 10 years. Everyone goes, well, that might be true, Ian, but I'm in construction. Yeah, I'll give it 2 years. I'll give it a year or two. I'll give it 2.
Hey,
Within
I've
2
seen
years.
I've seen these construction systems where they actually have machines that are building the houses.
That's right.
It's just like, what the hell? That's just astonishing. Now, I couldn't build a house, but here's a machine that has every bit of knowledge a person could ever, all the codes, everything necessary. They can go build a house, and in some cases, in a day, other cases, a couple, 3 days. Depends on the size,
Yeah.
I suppose. There's no way in the world that I could do that.
No, it's everybody, including a solopreneur, entrepreneur, a small company, mid company. So there's people don't realize that they need to learn this like as if their life depended on it, and very much so, their life is going to depend on it.
Well, their livelihood, for sure.
Yeah, their livelihood. Yeah. Well, it's
Their
almost the same
well-being.
thing, right?
Yeah, well, pretty much. You don't have much of a life.
It's very hard to
you don't
go
have a
out
livelihood.
hunting for livestock in this world
Yeah.
we live in today. So
Yeah, that's true.
so yeah, I think people are underestimating it, and I just think that besides, we could go a whole show on the economic model is going to change. I wrote a whole thing on this that I'm going to publish soon, but I can just share with you just quickly that the economic model of so what's interesting is if you look at the there's different schools of thoughts of economics, right? There's material economics, intelligence based economics, like materials based on scarcity, right?
Right.
Okay, and then intelligence is based on know-how. And then
Yes.
the other aspect of economics is network connections and platform effects, right? Building platforms which you can scale out. And then the other aspect of economics is diversity, and that has to do with out of distribution performance, and so there's these 4 areas, and then so you would say Adam Smith was connected with prices as local, right? So Adam Smith was concerned with scarcity and prices. Karl Marx was dealing particularly with feedback loops, right? Or the conflict of the feedback loops, meaning as capital compounds, right? Do
Right.
people get compensated appropriately for that? His argument was not. That's why we needed communism. Right. This is because the idea of having trade unions that would take on industries, right, or having political lobbyists was unheard of at that period. And then you have Hayek, and he deals with institutions that define or shape the rules, right? And that has to do with also like lobbyists, like a corporate lobbyist for a particular industry or cartel, as I call it, has a lot of influence the economy and the future of money and how money, right, is how
Certainly.
capital. So the AI said, hey, all of them are right, but they're not all right, and it's not one size fits all. Right? It's not one size fits all. What the AI has come up to is learning a new form of economics, not really such a new form, looking at everything, all the data, looking at all the different special cases, and then finding a new form of capitalism, right? I'll just say new form of economy that deals with all of these simultaneously, and then will create policy, markets, and such
Wow.
based on that framework.
And the potential for that is extraordinary. I mean, you have AI looking at it. Recursive
Yeah.
AI would look at that and refine it even further.
Right. So that reframes how you invest, that reframes how you operate a business, that
Wow.
it reframes how you conduct policy if you're in that position. It reframes labor, it reframes markets, it reframes money as we understand, right? So as we understand it. So all of this is going to be rolled out. It's the inception level starts next year, but the AGI, once that gets embedded and being operational,
Right.
it's going to become part of our new economy that will emerge. And it's
Wow.
going to go beyond Republican Democrat solutions, go back, cut the budget, do this, do it. No. We're we
think it would
move
just-
beyond.
Do you think it would just get rid of money and replace it with some other? No.
No,
I
we
just-
won't. We will have some form of exchange, right? So money as abundant intelligence continues to drive deflation because everything becomes cheaper, faster, easier, less
Right.
energy, right?
Yeah.
Right? Especially in knowledge work, the cost of cognitive labor is moving to zero. Let me
Wow,
repeat
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
just got
especially
it.
for all the know-it-all lawyers who tell
Wow.
me, right, the bar association or the education association or lobbyists will never allow this. The cost of cognitive labor, right? If I represent you in court or I give you a specialized consultation on your portfolio, or you hire me as a mentor or teacher to give you a certain skill set that you can monetize, is all moving to zero because of AI. And following that will be physical work via robots, right? So money is going to change because you will not need money to generate capital,
Oh, that's a little confusing.
right? Because the idea of I got to work. I got to work. I'm going to dig
Right.
ditches, or I'm going to represent my client in a lawsuit, right? They're both right about labor, and
Yeah.
you will not need that. So first, it's the white collar. All the people with the highest IQs and the most PhDs are going to hit first, and
Wow.
then everyone, right, to the guys who are. Remember, everyone, like every guy I know, like who needed to make money real quick in the summer or college or between jobs would go on, and what would you do? You would roof a house,
Yeah.
right? Did you remember? I did. Did you?
Yeah. I didn't roof
Yeah,
a house. I worked on the farm though.
Yeah. So, well,
Baling
in
hay.
Long Island, we didn't have farms, so it's like, hey, you want to make $18 an hour? You get on. You're afraid of heights? No. Get on a roof, and all day you're just pounding nails, right? Roofing a house, right?
Yeah.
Re-roofing a house, which had to be done for most homes every 12 years. So it was a
Sure. A continuous
so there's a lot of
loop.
work,
Yeah. That
Yeah.
many homes.
and you didn't have to have a lot of brain power, right? Just had
And
to
just
put
good
up with a bunch
balance.
of rude guys who never got past 10th grade and drank
Yeah.
a lot.
And a sense of balance.
Right, and would want to fight you if you disagreed on something lunchtime, which
Right.
generally most of the times they would regret doing. But it was sort of like that 70s, 80s, 90s mentality,
Yeah.
right? So what I'm getting at here is that the even the roofers, you hear me, roofers out there in Florida, you're going to get hit too, because physical work via robots is the second phase, and that will be achieved once we have AGI at the full blown AGI 2028. They can integrate that full blown AGI module or brain or chip or whatever you want to call it, that system, physically into the robot, and then hey, go roof the house, change the baby's diapers, replace the replace the car engine or do the transmission job, right? You can do it could do any one of those without a problem.
Wow. Yeah, we're moving into another level of existence that is baffling, I'm sure, to everyone listening. That is going to change the tone and texture and the very fabric of our existence when this moves to that point. We're going to see it happen. What a thing. So, we've been on for a couple hours. One last question, I guess I'd like to ask you about. Just one. Then we can go. Over the past many years, you've been on this show, and you have made profound predictions that have all come true. And I know you say, well, 85% or so. In my world, maybe it is 85%, but when I take a look back, what I remember about what you had to say, my God, it's I don't find any flaws in there at all, which is uncanny. So,
That's according to ChatGPT. I had it rigorously review those predictions.
Okay,
that's why
well,
it's right,
according
85.3%.
according to Jerry and Kathy, it's like 100%. Holy hell.
Well, I'll take it, Jerry. I'll take it.
Yeah, well, you're worth it. You deserve it. Do you have any predictions, just kind of a brief overview, anything you see coming up that is worth mentioning?
Well, a lot of what we discussed today is all coming sooner than everybody thinks in terms of the AI impact, the tsunami. I call it the AI tsunami. I do think inflation's going to creep up even more in a way that's not just about impacting your investment portfolio, but it goes down to what people are going to serve for dinner next year. I think inflation's just going to, and I think everyone wants to blame the president because that's just easy, but it goes back to a lot of bad political expediency and corrupt cronyism practices that go back to 2008 that nobody wanted to deal with, and people didn't want to pay the price of that. Yeah. So we're gonna see some big explosive, implosive developments with banks and regional banks and stuff like that, and all of this saving the system that is currently in a process of dying is going to be the price of inflation. So we're going to see things just inflate more, and people are going to just be able to afford a lot less, even though they're doing whatever they're doing, whether they're getting money from Social Security or they're generating income from, a fixed income from a job where, even asking for a raise, if they ask for a raise, they'll probably get laid off.
Yeah.
It's going to be very tough economically, and it won't be a great. There is a possibility we're going into a recession. I would say it's 50-50. We're going in. I was very certain 2025 we were not going into a recession. I thought it was around 20%, 30% max. Pretty certain we're going to have some recessionary, inflationary environment, and they're going to pull all the stops out to mitigate it, prevent it, or try and marginalize it. But it's going to be very upsetting and messy, and people are going to be very confused because they don't really understand what's really going on. They just know that their lifestyle is getting compromised even faster than it was during the Biden administration, when things went from bad to worse. And we're going to see the president do a lot of things that are very presidential and even crosses the line to try and salvage the system, or get the AI in a way that makes the economy work for the American people. But in that process of doing all those things, there's going to be a lot of pain. Going to be a lot of pain because we are in transition. It's not just about salvaging a broken economy, it's transitioning to a new economy. And some people are going to resist it, remain in denial, want to decide it's Trump's problem, it has nothing to do with and then vote for so I do see a movement towards socialism, AOC providing a socialist solution to many of the issues we're going to be dealing with in 2026. I really see that being the bigger thing. And then I just see the whole thing about dark, disturbing revelations about what went on with the government are going to come out. And, I do see the Epstein files coming out. I think that's one of the reasons they are going to I think they might arrest Prince Andrew, who's now been stripped of all his royal titles and his money.
Yeah, I saw
and his estate. Right. So I think that they basically said he's going to be extradited or something's going to happen. They don't just do that to do that. He didn't just do it because his brother was in a bad mood.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew we have to distance himself, and him and Bill Clinton, along with I think him, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, but definitely Prince Andrew is all over the place in those files. And there's no way, they can go forward releasing those files and allow him to remain, a royal untouchable. So I think that's coming out. The UFO stuff keeps coming out. We have to have a whole show on that, Jerry. Jerry, there's like 40 different things I can go into detail since we last talked that is spilling over at the highest level of government, NSA, DIA, people from DIA, NSA, giving explicit revelations, testimony, evidence on what was being covered up, what the great emergency is, what's happening with the UFO problem, why it's a problem, military problem, intelligence problem, how it has revolutionary consequences. They're using the word, we know if we just tell you, it will invoke a global revolution. Forget an American revolution, a global revolution.
Wow.
So, but they also say at the same time, it's got to come out. So I'm going to tell you enough, but not everything, because I'll be arrested. Or I won't be around, right? Like they'll say I committed a suicide. So a lot of them just say, I'm going to tell you as much as I can without imperiling my life.
Right.
And all of them are saying the same thing. So more or less about, and a lot of things you've already heard. Like, it's just confirmation of what we known, but we're going to get to so much more of that 2026.
That's the frustrating thing. I mean, everyone's talking about disclosure. And what the hell? I mean, disclosure from who? All you have to do is take a look at the preponderance of evidence that there is, video evidence, physical evidence now, on and on and on. And these people that are like you're talking about, they're saying, well, I can tell you any more than that because, but it'd be what disclosure from who? Because it's all out there. I mean, what do you need in order to feel like what you've thought for all these years that UFOs and ETs are real? What do you need beyond what's already been presented to firm that up within your own mind that it is, oh yeah, it's real, and by golly, that's the way it is. I just don't get it. Well,
people need to hear. I mean, we still have a generation of people who still feel, unless it comes from the government, there's a proclamation backed by an agency, right, that has legal credibility.
Yeah.
that until then, it still all falls under tinfoil
Hearsay.
hat conspiracy theory. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if the sources comes from the New York Times. By the way, many of these articles being published now, the New York Post and all these other periodicals, magazines, podcasts.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter unless it comes from someone like in the White House or the defense, unless it comes from some established institution, then it still all falls under conspiracy theory.
Right.
Even though the evidence that we have a continuing avalanche of evidence that just continues to accelerate. And the greatest achievement, Jerry, is the fact that unless CNN says it is so, it is not true, it is not real, and it's just hearsay, conspiracy theory talk. That is the great achievement by the media, by the deep state, if you will, or, that is the great cover-up.
Yeah.
So there's going to be more. It's going to be overwhelming. They already give riveting details. They give overwhelming detailed information, sources, times, dates. All of this in a court of law would be considered evidence in a trial. But until somebody says that's all true,
I
that,
see.
that is it.
Well, then
And
people
by the
come
way,
back.
if you live a life like that, if you have a secret second life, as some men and women do, more men so than women, but right, it creates what? It creates a schism, right? It creates a form of what we call neurosis
Yeah.
in a society, in a person, and that's exactly what we're experiencing, a neurosis.
Yeah. Yeah. I see your point there. Well, that's a good answer. I like that one.
So we're just going to get more of it. You're going to have more shows. It's going to get more detailed. It's going to get to the point where people are saying, this is just totally absurd. This keeps going on and on. Oh, by the way, at White House, we're going to have someone inside of the actual Trump or Obama White House, or maybe, or the Biden White House, total deep state. So I don't think that's going to happen. So
Yeah.
you're going to have somebody who was actually in the meetings with DIA, CIA, NSA, working at the White House, liaison, who's going to spill all the beans next year. Doesn't matter. Won't hear it on CNN. It'll be all over the internet. You may
Yeah.
even see the New York Post write about it, or you'll see some other, right? You may see it in the Atlantic. I don't know about that, but you'll see it. And yet, nothing. You will not see CNN, the voice of truth for America.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
The voice of truth. Yeah.
And they certainly are.
It's like I tell people, if you really want to learn investing, William, I really want to learn how to perform the markets as well as you do. Well, okay, first of all, you got to, the first thing you got to do, I want to learn the astrology of, no. The first thing you do, sir, is stop reading the Wall Street Journal. What? They look at me like I have four eyes. What are you? The Wall Street Journal is the source of all. No. It's about as honest and accurate as CNN.
Yeah. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Any more, if I want to know what the truth is, I just have to stay hungry. Unless I'm talking to you, of course.
Right.
And then it's a terrific meal.
Right.
So you
Exactly.
have a website. Tell folks about your website
Yeah.
and what you're doing. Please.
Yeah, people come to my website, williamstickevers.com, and you can see all my different membership programs. And I also do presentations on a monthly basis. I have different programs for different things. We do the deep dive with lots of predictions. I actually crack out more predictions than probably most astrologers in the United States combined, right? So, and they're detailed. And I publish the results. So all my predictions I made all last year. The accuracy was analyzed by ChatGPT. I published them, what I got right, what I got wrong. Even if the prediction didn't come out right, it'll say it got it 78% right, 75% correct, meaning we're off a little bit. It's not 100%. So almost everything was at least 65 to 100%, within that range. And so I published that. We talk about everything that the news will not tell you that's happening, that's going to impact your life, that's going to make the difference, right? Whether you want to know it or not is what we discuss. And what I just go into detail, and I have reports for people who don't want to hear me rant. I have like 90 page reports on a monthly basis. Plus we have the financial forecasting groups. Mm-hmm. So, so I do all of that. And we talk about UFOs to NDEs to Bitcoin to macroeconomics. I mean, we cover the whole gamut. There's nothing really I won't talk about or touch. And my goal is to provoke you, to get you upset, not because what I'm saying is offensive, because it challenges the worldview that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you've done that to Kathy and I, and it was well worth the effort on your part to do it. We appreciate it so much. And folks, if you're not familiar with what William has and what he is doing, I suggest you go check out WilliamStickEvers.com. You might want to even sign up, become a member at some level. Kathy and I are, and we have set in on quite a few of his programs, and I'm telling you, there's nothing like it. It's truly remarkable. So, do yourself a favor. Feed your brain. And the way you do that, well, if you're not at JerryWillShow.com, then go to go to WilliamStickEvers.com. It's like a 2-course meal that way. And you can...
By the way, they can go to my YouTube. If they're not convinced, just go to my YouTube. Just go back a few years. You'll see most of what I predicted for 2025.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's right. You've got YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And we have a lot of the archive shows at JerryWills.com. These are free to the public. You don't have to be a member, just like this show. And it goes back all the way to the beginning. So if you want to scope it out, feel free to do so. There's no cost to you to do it. So, I guess that's pretty much the long and short of all of it, kiddo.
Yeah.
Do that show on UFOs.
Covered the gamut again.
Yeah, well, we always do. We always do, and it's always just a lot of fun. I enjoy this so much. So I want to close out the show. Thank you for coming on. Hang around until after I close it out. I'd like to say a goodbye to you properly.
Sure.
So with that, we'll get to the end and say goodbye to everyone else. See you in a moment. Well, there you have it, folks. Our guest, William Stickevers, as always, extraordinary, informative, entertaining, and gives you a reason to stop and think and contemplate. I hope you've enjoyed this show as much as I have enjoyed putting this together for you. We'll have more shows coming up soon. You might have noticed I've been on a bit of a hiatus the past 6 weeks. There's a good reason for that. I might go into it next show. But we do have more shows planned in the future, and I look forward to having you in the audience so we can share these bits and pieces of knowledge and information. And, of course, because I thoroughly enjoy you being there. And I thank you so much for being a part of this. If you're watching this and you're not a member, I encourage you to consider becoming a member. Your best value point is the $15 per month membership level. You get everything, really, except for a couple of things. It's a $25 level. But I think if you go to the $15 level, you'll discover that you'll be involved watching video after video. There are hundreds of them up there, covering a span of many, many, many years. So enjoy the archives. And I guess that's all for me. So I'm going to say goodbye. As you know, when we get to this point in the show, I always tell you, be kind to yourselves and be good to each other. And no matter where you are in this huge world, just remember that tomorrow's another day, and it's going to be a good one. And with that, thank you for watching, folks. It's time for me to fade away. I'll see you later. Goodbye for now. Looks good. Oh, hi. I was just sitting here getting ready for the next show. We have some fantastic guests lined up, and our next guest, unparalleled. Anyway, as I was getting everything set up, it suddenly occurred to me, you're probably not a member of the Jerry Will Show. I don't know how that's possible, but maybe you're not. And if that's the case, well, you might want to consider becoming a member.